Good evening and welcome to Caribbean Body Talk, where the vision gets clearer every time. I'm Christina Perry, your reporter. Tonight's program brings us a very special guest. My guest this evening is Mr. Waithe, a Guyana-born musician with a very special style of music. Mr. Waithe joins us at BVC this evening, stopping by after he's just arrived in New York after a very long flight from London. I'd like to thank you and welcome to Caribbean Body Talk.
Thank you.
As I said at the top of the program, you were born in Guyana. Could you please tell our audience a little more about yourself?
Yes, I was born in Guyana in South America, and it was a very exciting period for me being born in Guyana, because there's lots of music I grew up with. I grew up starting music in the Salvation Army band, where my father, Waithe, was my first teacher. Mm-hmm. And later I joined the police band, where I developed a lot of musical training.
And tell me, when did you first realize you had an interest in music?
Well, I think while I was going to the Salvation Army, it was really going to the church and hearing all this wonderful drumming, trumpet, brass playing. Mm-hmm. And I was really entranced, and I joined the band and started taking lessons, learning the basic technique in trumpet playing.
Mm-hmm. But you have a flute before you, so now how did you go from playing a trumpet to a flute?
Well, that was by accident, because later I applied to join the police band. Uh-huh. And there weren't a vacancy for a trumpet player, and I was reluctantly coerced into becoming a flute player, and it took me nearly a week to get the technique and the embouchure right. But I soon fell in love with the instrument, and I can't see myself playing any other instrument but the flute now.
And the music that you play, I understand you compose the music yourself.
Yes, because I discovered that the flute repertoire was fairly limited, because in the police band I developed a lot of classical music techniques. I started taking all the Royal Schools of Music exams from to the diploma level. Later I went to study music, had a British Council scholarship to go to England, where I developed conducting, arranging, composition and flute technique. Okay. Came back to Guyana, and I still wasn't very happy with the flute, the limitations of the flute in terms of the repertoire and the scope.
Is there a lot of music for flutes out there that you could just play music that's already composed, or did you start to compose the music because basically there wasn't anything out there that you could?
No, there's a wide classical repertoire.
Okay.
But for me, trying to use the flute in a diverse and different setting, because often you find people doubling with saxophone and flute. Okay. And I discovered that the flute it's not recognized as a solo instrument, or it's not as sexy as some people say, like trumpet or the saxophone. Okay. And during that time I discovered the American flute player Hubert Laws and Herbie Mann, and they gave me a different idea of the flute technique. During that period, I also discovered African and Indian music in my Guyanese culture. And I started studying, and I discovered that every country got a flute. And that every culture, the flute can be played as a solo instrument. Okay. So I started writing music specially for my kind of Guyanese, Caribbean kind of background.
And your flute playing has taken you, you have formed a band, the Makuzi Players, and I understand just the name of the group itself has a significance. That's correct.
It's the Makuzi Players is named after the largest Amerindian tribe in Guyana, called the Makusis. Okay. And the central instrument to that, musical instrument in that group, that tribe is the flute. And it's a sort of salute to the first peoples of the region, the first people in the Caribbean, who's sort of mirrored our experiences that made what we are today in terms of Guyanese culture, Guyanese attitudes. What we are today, Amerindians, is a celebration and a respect for that culture. That I decided that the flute and my band should be called that, Waithe and the Makuzi Players.
And as you play your flute and you compose your music, you use your culture to guide you. Yeah. When others hear your music, how are they affected by that? I mean, is your music accepted in the classical world as it is in the jazz world?
Well, I think it's much more of in England we got something called world music or fusion music. Okay. And jazz because of the whole basis of my music is based on improvisation, which is very common in jazz, which is common in African music, which is common in Indian music. So I fit in the category of jazz or world music kind of category. And for example, we just came back, we went to Lithuania and Estonia in the Baltic states, the old Soviet Union, a few weeks ago, British Council tour. And I was amazed that here I was in that country, no one knows my music until we arrive. And our concert was sold out 3 weeks in advance. And there's 1,000 seats in most venues, and it was really mind-blowing, the response to the music.
Is it that they've never heard it in that the flute, you know, taking the flute and seeing it as a solo instrument that could carry
That's right.
a whole song and a band where the flute leads off as opposed to something in the background that adds a little flavor to the song?
That's correct.
Because most often in a band or orchestra, the flute is there. You know, it has its moments, but it's not the major instrument.
Yeah.
So you kind of turning things around this way.
Yeah.
I also understand I was reading your bio, the music that you play, you've composed yourself.
That's correct.
So it's not anything that you've taken from anyone else. How different is that as far as with orchestra and things like that? Did you yourself compose it all?
Christine, if I can give you an example, because some of my early training was very based on Western classical music. And so the technique that I was taught and trained was this sort of technique, which is very familiar, and the kind of color you find in lots of different pieces, like songs like this. Travels to India and to study Indian music, and Africa to study African music, and my Guyanese background, I decided to explore different styles and bring those experiences into my flute technique, into my flute playing, into my compositional work, because I think it's important to try to show the flute in its broad sense. So what I started experimenting with is, like, take for instance the kind of songs we get in Guyana, in the rainforest, the jungle songs. Starting from simple sounds of clicking the keys. This can be very similar to the cricket songs you find, because in the Caribbean and in Guyana, the nights are very alive. And I can imagine hearing these sort of songs, and then bringing in the wind. And then bringing in animal songs. Or the bird songs. Or the humming song. Or the jazz songs. It reminds me of some of the American singer Bobby McFerrin goes something. And he does. And what I decided to also use some of those songs.
That was amazing. I mean, you know, you could close your eyes and you think that you're at the zoo and they're doing those different, you know, the wildlife.
Yeah.
All of this came from this instrument.
The flute, yeah. But a lot of people don't take these risks, and I'm trying as much as possible in my work to push the barriers back, and also to show people, I mean, what we do as musicians, as composers, is to reflect life.
Well, I'm saying with the different cultures, because you go to Guyana and you would hear these sounds and you wouldn't think anything else, but the fact that an instrument could duplicate it, that's amazing. That's a talent. You're truly talented.
Thank you.
Where do you see yourself going with this?
Well, I just got a new, my new current CD is called Magic of Olmec, and here again is a celebration of the First Peoples, and the First Peoples, because we live in Europe or we live in North America, and we tend to forget those people who have made our lives what it is today, and made our journey, and who started the journey long before Columbus. Long before Columbus closed there, these people were there, and this album, Magic of Olmec, Olmec was a civilization in Mexico, which is linked to the Amerindians in Guyana, but also in the Caribbean. And this album is a celebration of First People. Out of the Amerindians, there's also people like the Aborigines in Australia, the American Indians, and all the First Peoples.
Everyone can embrace this music.
Embrace, yes. And I see myself as taking my music as far as possible, not only composing, because I write also for radio and television, so I do soundtracks for radio and television. I've done a lot of work with a lot of producers in London, BBC producer on the Channel 4. And my album is being played up and down on the jazz station. We got a jazz station in London called Jazz FM, and it's very, very popular on the Jazz FM radio station. And do a lot of traveling. And I'm here to do some work for the concert.
Do you feel that that by playing the flute, because realistically, young people today, they're not familiar with this type of music. You know, it's rap music and things like that. Have you had any encounters with young people who hear this music and, you know, it's totally different from what they've been accustomed to and exposed to, and it opens their eyes? Because, I mean, realistically, I know the sounds that I'm used to hearing from a flute. I've never heard sounds like that before. So I'm sure for a young person, it really opens their eyes.
But it's interesting because that's part of the reason why I've now been working on albums. I've got a new album coming out in August, another album. Because I think one of the things for me is to try as much as possible to be a role model to young people, to show them and let them expose them to a wide cross section of music.
Right.
So even if they're doing rap, some of the things one can say I use, because I think the way we use the voice is another aspect of my work, and I often when I do concerts I use not only the songs that are familiar in terms of rapping and so, but I also do like the rhythm sounds. And that can be linked to what is very common, jungle songs, the rapping songs, and that can be also underlying vocal effects on top of a rhythmic pattern that I've developed. And often it's very popular.
Well, in case anyone has just tuned in and they don't understand or realize what's going on, you're part of a very special program. My name is Christina Perry, and our special guest this evening is Mr. Keith Waithe, who has a wonderful musical style and has brought life to this flute. Let me ask you, as we return back, when you play your music for yourself, when you're alone, spiritually, I'm sure it's very uplifting. What is it that you personally get when you compose your music and you're playing it? I'm sure it's on a higher level than just, say, someone who listens to it.
Well, I see my music as, because I see myself as a vessel. I think there's a greater being up there who has given me this honor and privilege to be able to take this music to people, to take it out there, to be able to create sounds that people would love.
Yes.
And I'm very privileged. I remember one concert I had in this open park, and after the first at the end of the concert, this Jamaican woman came up to me and she said, "Keith, your music reminded me of some of the songs I had in Jamaica, in the hills in Jamaica." And I think that was very moving for me. And I feel very privileged and proud that God has given me a voice, a talent, in order to push that. To take my music somewhere else, take it somewhere, and it can really be developed, and also to bring inspiration to people, because there's so much negativism in this world today.
Yes.
And I think for my music, I try to give hope to people, and also to see fun, because the thing about life is fun. We must enjoy ourselves, and I think music can give you that fun, that joy, that hope, that release from the tension.
Right.
That I think is important for us to be aware of, that people are out there are experiencing, and that we must be able not to forget that they have needs. And I think my music, I tried through my music to do that.
Is there any projects that you have planned, that you project, that you would like to get into, that you haven't had a chance to yet with your music?
Well, I would like to be able to do more music in North America, here in America and also Canada, because a lot of I'm now gradually getting more established in Europe, and of course in Britain I'm quite well known. But I'd like to do more and bring my band over here on tour and try and get the music as wide as possible to show people that a lot of the things, the Caribbean things, because we've got a very strong Guyanese Caribbean community, and often in London, and we often integrate and do work together. Okay. The other thing I do is I work a lot of jazz, Black American jazz musicians who come over, like Randy Weston or Talib Kidway. I've worked with both in America, both in England and America, and I'm hoping a while I'm here to make some re-establish contact again with them. So there's always that link, and I think it's important as a musician to do that.
Aside from the music that you create and you enjoy, is there any other styles of music that you enjoy?
Well, I listen to a lot of music, spiritual music, whether it's religious music, traditional religious music, whether it's gospel, religious. But I listen to a lot of music from different cultures, and different cultures that give you hope, like meditation, music for meditation and relaxation. Because I think I remember years ago I composed a special cassette of meditation music.
Really?
And I think that's the other thing I very much believe, that also the spiritual aspect of the music, how it touches people's lives, how it does relax people. So one of the things I do is listen to a lot of music from different cultures, whether it's Bali music, whether it's gamelan, whether it's African traditional music, like the kora. Remember the kora is a 24-string African harp,
right,
from the Senegal and from the Gambia, and it's such a beautiful instrument. I listen to a lot of kora music, and I work with kora musicians in London.
That's wonderful. This is one food here, but I heard you have such a collection. How many are you up to now?
Well, I was able to get a couple more from Lithuania. I've got 92.
92 flutes.
And I was just promised 3 more from Guyana, a Guyanese bone flute, which I've been dying to get for years. Guyanese bone flute, and 2 Amerindian bamboo flutes. So that will bring up the collection, hopefully, by the end of the year to
and when you compose, do you
95.
use, I mean, of all these 90 flutes that you have, do you use them, different ones for composing different songs?
Well, yes, but I normally use one to compose and then decide the best sound. Because if I'm in concert, I often have 15, 16 flutes with my band, or if I'm doing solo work.
Okay.
So there are certain pieces, like I have a beautiful alto flute, which is a very deep flute, and that gives you a very calm and relaxed kind of atmosphere, feeling.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is this your particular favorite?
One of them.
How long have you had this flute?
Well, this is one of. But I have this about 5 years. This one, but it's the nice thing about this one, because it gives you, it's a Chinese flute, but it gives you the kind of depth that I like, and the low tone. And also the atmospheric. So it gives you more scope in comparison to the bamboo flutes.
Oh, I see. I'm sure there are people out there watching that are maybe thinking about trying out the flute as an instrument as opposed to the standard guitar, drums, or piano. Any words of encouragement you would have for anyone who's thinking about, maybe I should try this?
Well, I would say to any young person out there, I would say that it'd be nice for them to take up the flute.
Well, I mean, tell them what they're missing. Show them what they're missing.
Well, I think I was going to say the important thing is to get a technique, because one of the good things about classical music, it gives you the technique. You learn the embouchure, lip formation, how to finger, how to breathe, and then you can explore other things, other effects. Because I think I used to spend in Guyana, and I spent 8 hours practicing there, in order to develop my technique. So the important thing is long notes. It might sound boring, but very slow exercise, like. and scales. And then explore other styles.
Oh, okay. How long do you think it takes? You practice 8 hours a day. So how long was it before you felt proficient in playing the flute? That you felt, you were ready to start to compose music?
Well, I think people can compose at any age. I think, but I think the important thing is to be disciplined enough to pursue the flute or whatever instrument you're pursuing, whether it's a violin or piano, bass or drums. It's important to spend that time developing that technique, because I think it's pointless you trying to try all these effects that I was doing tonight without understanding the basics, because it's important to understand the basics. Because ever so often you got to refer to those basics in order to develop a new style or a new particular rhythm or a pattern or a breathing technique, which is essential. So if you don't have those basics, you can't do it.
Do you have a favorite song that you've composed? Is there one of all the music you've composed? Is there one that's a particular favorite of yours?
Well, there's a piece I composed called Guyana with Love, which encompasses some of the songs that I've created tonight for you. Would you like me to play that?
Yes.
Yeah. I'll give you a shortened version.
Okay. Wonderful. This has been a wonderful night. I had serenading, very different, and I learned about an instrument that I didn't pay that much attention to before, and I'm sure a lot of people learned a lot. What is the difference between when you go from one country to another and perform? Is there any difference in the way people react to the music?
Well, I think for me, it's not so much the reaction from people. I think it's much more of after the concert, the kind of informal discussion I have with people. It's wonderful during the performance, because I think one of the things about performances is nice when people respond during. But for me, because it's electrifying and it's very inspiring for you as an artist. But I think for me, it's talking to people, talking about why I'm interested in flute, what inspired me, why do I use that technique, why do I play certain pieces and so on. I think that's the thing for me. And I find every country I've gone, that's the kind of thing that has really given me a lot of hope and give me the kind of strength to carry on. And as a musician, as a composer, as an educator.
Well, I want to thank you so much. I know you had a long flight. I'm sure you're quite jet lagged, but this has been a wonderful experience. Thank you so much. I want to thank you all for joining us here tonight on Caribbean Body Talk. My name is Christina Perry, your host for this evening. But before I go, I'd like to leave you with this message. Surround yourself with a few good people. share love, respect for each other, and knowledge. As you can see, it will definitely make a difference. As I said, I'm Christina Perry, your host. Thank you for watching, and see you next time on Caribbean Body Talk. Good night.